Good morning, everybody. It is Stephanie Luares from Heart and Soul Fitness and Wellness. And wonky lighting, it's still dark out. I'm not going to fix it right now. It is 5:30 in the morning on Monday, and I am fired up. I just heard a situation from one of my clients that is not that uncommon. I've experienced it myself, and it makes me angry. So it is Weight Stigma Awareness Week, which is really the perfect time to be talking about this, to bring awareness to what weight stigma and weight bias is. So I'm not going to tell you my client's story, that's their story, and not my place to share. But I will tell you what happened to me. So about 14, 15 years ago, was right after we got married, I needed sinus surgery, like outpatient, easy peasy sinus surgery was how this was presented to me. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board. I'm done being sick, whatever. Sinus surgery aside, I arrive at this outpatient surgery center the day of surgery, all through pre-op, hooked up to the IV, all ready to go. And they come in and say, sorry, your BMI is too high. We can't perform surgery. Now, how do you get all the way into pre-op without a single thing being said? And I can tell you, my doctor knew my weight, pre-registration knew my weight. So, there were multiple steps to halt this before I reached pre-op. So, your BMI is too high, we can't do surgery today. And this was conveyed to me in probably one of the most insensitive ways possible. Not that it would have made it any better, but it was with such disdain and such disgust that I went home and cried the entire day because I just felt so less than. Not in the fact that, ultimately, whatever, we're doing this for your safety, blah, 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 but that it was presented to me in such a rude and dismissing manner. Now, my doctor's office had called me later that day, said, no problem, we're going to get you scheduled over here, and, like a week later. And, this is what happens. And, so it just, slightly different procedure. Not the sinus procedure was different, but the whole beginning to end hospital procedure was different. I'm like, cool, great. Was handled totally fine at the hospital. Nothing was ever said. Nobody batted an eye. But this is what fat people experience every single day, is this disregard for who we are, what we're capable of, and what our actual health is, because somebody's looking at just our weight or just the body mass index, which I've talked about exhaustively. It was created to statistically compare white dudes, like not even women, people of other races, anything. And it's not meant as a measure of health. It's a statistical measure of a small group of white Eurocentric men. So, BMI aside. But I share this because this is something, again, that fat people experience every single day. And so often with other surgeries, now this was just simple sinus surgery, which I'm grateful for. It was revolutionary for me. But when there are other surgeries or other procedures that are needed. Very often, people are cut off at an obligatory size, an obligatory number. And to the extent that sometimes people are told, either lose weight or get weight loss surgery. Now, help me understand this logic when it comes to weight loss surgery. That someone is going to go under anesthesia, modify how their body works so that they can go under anesthesia again, oftentimes for less invasive procedures. This makes zero sense. And this is held over people's heads. If you don't get weight loss surgery, we're not going to provide this orthopedic surgery. We're not going to work on this particular organ. Things that change health outcomes, things that change quality of life. And weight loss surgery, while in the short term changes health outcomes, long term, we're looking at malnutrition, problems with nutrient absorption. Often at that 5-year mark and beyond, we're not seeing sustained weight loss. So what was the benefit of going and literally cutting holes in your body and changing how it was created to work so that you could do something else that's going to change your health outcomes? There is very little sense in this. A lot of it too is how fat people are perceived. Everything is available in healthcare to work with all bodies. And oftentimes it falls to the patient to have to advocate, to have to ask for what is needed rather than a doctor's office or a facility or a hospital providing those things. Now, yes, sometimes those things cost more, but it's not always going to be just for that one person. I guarantee this affects more people than you think. For example, the surgery that I had to have rescheduled, that BMI was pretty low. I'm a tall person. And so, looking at that height to weight ratio, understandable, whatever. But when you look at that BMI number, that excludes a large portion of the population. It's not sensical. I think even on much smaller terms, I've gone to my doctor's office for 9 years. We moved here 9 years ago. They still don't have a blood pressure cuff that fits my arm. So my blood pressure gets taken on my forearm or my wrist, which simply is not as accurate. It is bullshit if somebody is telling you that having your blood pressure taken on your forearm is just as accurate as being taken traditionally. And thank goodness that I have gone to the extent of investing in my own blood pressure machine, my own blood pressure cuff, so that I have a record of taking my blood pressure regularly in my home. So I know that what comes up at the doctor's office is not the trend, but the onus still falls on me to provide that burden of proof. I have to take the time consistently to take those readings, to have a log of dates, times, and readings to counteract that one blink in time, because somebody can't be bothered to provide the medical equipment suitable for my body. Obviously, I'm angry about these things. Much of it is out of my control, other than continuing to advocate for myself and for other people and saying that no, this is wrong, this is why. And honestly, here's the studies that back this up. It size is not an indicator of health. I don't know how many times and in how many other ways that I can express that. But we look at it as such a judgment piece in our society that thin equals healthy and fat equals unhealthy. And that's just not the case. Someone at any size can have ideal health outcomes. Someone on the other end of the spectrum, anyone can have those ideal or those not so ideal health outcomes independent of size. There's so much in our lives that affect health outcomes. It's not solely on size. It's our genetics. It's our predisposition. It's honestly where we live. I mean, everybody and their brother's talking about this Blue Zones documentary, which is on my list. I'll get to it eventually. But I mean, Blue Zones is a real thing, but food accessibility is a real thing. And, it comes down to socioeconomic factors. It comes down to privilege in what people can afford and not afford, both medically, at the grocery store, the things that they can engage in that alter those health outcomes. It's not just food and moving our body either, because that can be done anywhere. But really looking at all the factors that affect someone's health. We even get down to intrinsically how someone is sleeping, how well are they hydrating, how well are they managing stress. I mean, there are people out there that are classified as super fit and super healthy and might only be sleeping 4 hours a week. And, they may be proclaiming this is the greatest thing in the world, that, this is just part of the grind. Don't get me started on grind culture, but no, 4 hours of sleep is not adequate. And ultimately, that is going to have an effect on health outcomes. It's not something to be emulated. And so, backing up the train a little bit, looking at this idea of weight stigma in weight bias, we almost, as a society, have become programmed to fat is bad, thin is good. And it disregards such a massive amount of the population. Size is not an indicator of health. Size is not an indicator of worth. Size is not an indicator of ability. Size is not an indicator of character. And yet, somehow, we've reached the point where, based on how you look or what you weigh, is a moral failing. And this needs to be reversed. This is why things like Weight Stigma Awareness Week exist. This is why there are rising and more advocates for eradicating weight stigma, eradicating weight bias, the fat liberation movement. And this is not something that's a glorification of a particular body size. That's simply fighting for equal treatment for all people. How many times do we see that in today's society with other groups? Equal treatment for all people. It's all we want. It's all people want. And so I just encourage you, not only today, if you actually listen this far, but I'm going to be talking about this more this week. What are your thoughts and feelings? What are the things that those biases, those truths that you hold, and are they true? Are they factual? Or is this something that you have come to hold because it's a societal value? And I might change your mind, I might not, but it's important to have the conversation. And so happy Monday, and we'll talk to you more soon.